Hello everyone, welcome to Animate Like Josh. In this video, I'll be going through step by step all you need to create a character like this for Adobe Character
I don't
Animator.
wanna go. I'm scared.
If you want to skip all these steps and just get the character, this character is available on 2on3d.com. The link will be available in the description of this video. The video will be divided into probably 3 parts. The first 2 parts will be in Illustrator, and then the last will be in Adobe Character Animator. This image was sent to me by a client who wanted me to create a character for him. That's exactly this character. He wanted it in front and side view. I went further and added some triggers, some cycle triggers, physics, etc. The first thing I did was to go on and trace the character hair. Of course, you can do whatever part you're comfortable with. The number one tip you need is to always work in isolation mode. This video will mostly be time-lapsed as tracing and drawing is mostly mundane and repetitive, but I'll keep trying as much as possible to explain what I am doing. Currently I'm filling in the back hair. That's the hair behind. You have to put that in a separate layer, considering the front hair is in front of the face and the back is behind. So another tip is always work with groups, not layers. You will appreciate this later. The reason working with layer is bad is because there's a limit to how much you can fix eventually. If you work with groups, you can just select the entire character and change its color or tweak certain things. But if you're working in layers, you have to open some of these layers up for you to be able to access the parts in those layers. So what you should do is you draw in isolation, you select the entire drawing that you're going to be joining, and then you group them. You group them as a layer, you drag and put under the character should be one layer, and then you keep adding those groups inside that one layer. Do not create more than one layer. So now I am working on the torso. This is quite straightforward, honestly. I'm using the pin tool to manipulate the part. Okay, so a little recap. The first tip is to always draw in isolation mode. Well, not necessarily always. You can decide not to, but it's more helpful when you have so many layers that can distract you, and you might end up redrawing in a layer where you're not supposed to be drawing in. So it's better to go into isolation. You select the group or the layer or whatever, and then you go into isolation, and then you draw that particular area. If you're drawing the torso, you go into isolation and draw just the torso. If you're drawing the face, you go into isolation and draw just the face. Okay, and then tip number 3. This is actually supposed to be tip number 1, which is okay, some people will use Photoshop to create Adobe Character Animator characters. Well, I would say do not use Photoshop if you do not have to. Try as much as possible to use Adobe Illustrator, because Adobe Illustrator is a vector-based software. So you could zoom in, and I know there are other ways you could actually use Photoshop to get the best quality, of course, but somehow it comes with some issues like slowing down your computer and stuff like that. But Adobe Illustrator, since it's vector based, you can zoom into characters, you can improve the character quality directly in Adobe Adobe Character Animator, and honestly, it's just the best. You can actually move, even you can reuse these characters in other vector-based softwares. You can push it into Blender, push it into Toon Boom, and so honestly, I'll always say stick to Adobe Illustrator instead of Photoshop, especially for creating characters for Adobe Character and Adobe Character Animator. But well, you do you. Okay, the zipline actually took me a while to figure out, considering initially I was going to just outrightly just go in and draw the zipline, but I now realized that I could actually use this trick to actually just create it and then make it into one layer, and then group the entire thing like that. So Yeah, that was it. Okay, that was just to round the character up, just so the was so that it doesn't leak out. Like when I'm using the paint bucket, so it doesn't leak out. And I'm just shading in some depth. One feature I thought of for this character was to be able to make the character, since he's wearing a hood with a front pocket. I was hoping I would be able to make the character to, of course, I actually did it, to make the character to be able to put his hands in his pocket, the front pocket. So, like, make a cycle and trigger that you'll be able to just press a button and the character will be able to put his hand into in that pocket. So eventually I ended up I'm not sure if I recorded that part, but I eventually had to separate that front pocket, make it a separate layer so that the hands can go in. Okay, since this character's leg was not available to me, at least not for the front view, I had to improvise, like come up with how the leg should look based off from his sitting position to those other positions that are available. So I started creating the legs, and I sketched it out and then tried to like make the shoes. Okay, the shoes, you could actually make that into one layer, but what I've realized with Adobe Character Animator is it treats separate layers, even if they are together, even if the character is merged, like the hands, those joints, make them separate. I think that should be another tip. Make them into a separate, like you should make from the wrist to the elbow should be a separate layer, and then the elbow to the shoulder should be a separate layer. Somehow you will not notice, like you could actually just make it into a straight arm or straight legs or whatever. uh, you could actually get away with it. But what I realized is if you are going to be using dragger, it's better when those joints are separate. Character Animator actually treats those joints separate to an extent that when you use the dragger, you'll be able to see those bend lines. But if they are not separate, it will just skew the entire hand. It will just like morph it into a bend. So I'll say keep those layers separate. I I normally used to I keep the shoes separate. I keep the knee separate from like, and then the laps I keep it separate too. Okay, now I'm working on the crotch. There are some characters that I combine the torso with the crotch, but not in all characters. There are some characters that it's better to make them into a separate. This is especially when it's a two-third character. This is a front character, so it could actually work. You could actually just join that to the torso and it will work perfectly. But for a two-third, I believe it should be in a separate layer. Now I'm working on the face, so it's the perfect time to save what I've already got. Okay, another tip for the eyes that you're supposed to know is after drawing the default eye position, you should be able to okay, the character cannot his eyes cannot just stay open like that. The eye is supposed to blink, it's supposed to be able to make his eyes lower and wider, like to show emotions and stuff like that. So after drawing the the eye in its default position, what you're supposed to do is you can use the puppet tool to expand it and then make a wide position, and then you keep reducing it from that default position up until the eyes is closed. This is a front view character, so what I do is I just draw one eye, duplicate, sorry, duplicate it, and duplicate and reflect it onto the other eyes. So yeah, so you don't have to redo the eyes over and over, and then you merge them together into one group, and then you have an eye for a particular Sometimes people actually separate the right eye from the left eyes. I don't think it's necessary. I've used Adobe Character Animator for a while, and I can actually say it is not necessary per se. it is necessary to a particular point. Like if you want to make make it like use parallax effect and stuff like that in the software. But I do not think it is necessary per se. You could actually just put both eyes together into one group. You could group them together as one, and then like okay, like watching this right now, you could actually right now I'm drawing in all those eyes. I've been able to, I keep reducing it to the point that I now have a blink, like a closed eye. So what I do is I duplicate it, and then both closed eyes are in one layer, both wide eyes are in one layer, not a separate layer, like that. So what I do is I rig, when I come to the rigging part. What I'll now do is I'll just for the blink, I'll select both. I'll select that one grouped blink eye, and then I'll select both. So it will be able to blink with just that one group. I don't know if you understand what if you are getting, if you are following, but eventually you'll be able to understand what I'm talking about. Maybe when I start duplicating and start merging both into one group, maybe you'll be able to get what I'm saying. So now I'm working on the eyebrow. The eyebrow is a necessary evil. Is a necessary evil. Like it's something that you cannot, especially if you want your character to be able to show emotions like smile, angry, like worried, inquisitive, like those kind of. Listen, the eyebrow actually conveys more than even the eyes. So what I do is I have, I think, about five emotions that you cannot get away with. You can go beyond five, you can do more than five, but there are five emotions that you cannot do away with. One is the angry eyebrow. So I do that and I make it into a cycle, a cycle a trigger, a cycle trigger, because I do not like using the inbuilt eyebrow control. This I prefer to bake in my own past the particular emotion, so that when I click a particular button, I see the eyebrow in the angry position or whatever position I want it, instead of using my facial this thing to animate the character. I actually bake it into the character. So there are like five emotions that you cannot, that it's just, you just have to do that. So one of them is the angry. The second is the sad face. The third is like raised eyebrow, like surprised or something like that. And then the smirk. And then you can actually do go beyond five. It's not, you're not confined to just working with five. You can go beyond that. So you see, I've duplicated the eyebrow. Since the face is a front view, you do not have to keep working on the same thing over and over again. You could just work on one and duplicate to the other. That's exactly what I just did here. And if you see, I'm actually combining those groups, because whenever you duplicate something, especially when you're working with group, not layers, when you're working with groups, it tends to create more groups. Like it doesn't create it inside that group, it creates another group with that particular part. So the best thing to do is you could just merge those groups together. You see, I'm doing the same thing with the eyes. I'm merging those this thing. You could see I'm merging the closed eyes with the closed eyes. That is the right closed eye with the left closed eyes. The right wide eyes with the left wide eyes. I keep doing that. Like that's how me I create my characters. You could go to the rigor of making them separate, which is going to make rigging extremely hard for you. This is an easier way for you to actually rig your characters, considering that is making it separate is not actually necessary. You'll be able to see that when we progress further, when we go into the rigging aspect of this tutorial. What I'm doing here is quite self-explanatory. I'm just following and making the characters close to what I was given, like make just polishing the character, adding specular, adding some like all those necessary things that will make the character to look as closest to what I was given, to the image I was given. Okay, since each hair strand is in a separate layer, yeah, they're not merged together into one this thing. So I'm going through and closing each so that I'll be able to paint each of um those hair strand. I'll be able to use the paint bucket to paint each of those hair strand. So I'm closing it with a transparent line. I'm closing with a transparent line. So you could actually use the same color as the hair, but it's better to use transparent line and then you can paint over it. So I'm closing each of every separate line, the legs and this is, since they are openings. I'm currently trying to close each distance so that I'll be able to use the paint bucket tool and paint over it. So one issue that you might actually um, um eventually actually start realizing with Illustrator is not as should I say complex, or no, not as sophisticated as Photoshop. So there are some few things that you might want to do that you might not be able to do, or at least not be able to do comfortably with Adobe Illustrator. Like in Photoshop, you could just go through and paint in a specular and maybe use a kind of brush that actually works. Like for instance, the trousers. It's going to be damn difficult for me to be able to get that particular kind of brush, that kind of shading on the trousers. So you could actually still move the character to Photoshop and then do whatever you want to do whatever editing you want to do on Photoshop, move it back into Adobe Illustrator, and then vectorize it, like make it you could use the trace the trace tool and then retrace the character and get that whatever effect you want. But to an extent, it's better to sacrifice some of these few things to get a vector based and character. You see, I'm duplicating the legs since it's a front view character. I just duplicated the leg and I'm trying to put everything together. I'm almost done painting the character already. So I'm using the picker tool to pick some of the colors that I will eventually need. Okay, so now I'm going through I'm painting the eyes. Okay, yeah. So what I do is I separate. Normally you're supposed to work with just one eye. But what I do is, since I'm going to be using the um the clipping mask tool that's in Adobe Character Animator. So what I do is I make two eye layers. I duplicate the eyes after making every group, that is the wide eyes, the closed eyes, and whatever, into one group. I pick that whole group, that is the eyes. I duplicate it, and then one of them will be painted white while the other will not be painted. The other will just have its transparency inside. So that will be helpful. Eventually you'll be able to understand what I am saying eventually, because eventually you'll be using the the clipping marks to hide the iris. So normally, without the duplicated eye, you'll be able to mask it fine, but the eyes will be puncturing. The color of the eyes will be puncturing through the black line. Eventually you understand what I'm saying. Okay, we'll be ending this video here. We'll be going to the next part of this video. You can follow if you want, or you could just skip all this step, go and get this character, unravel it, check the character, check what makes it tick, check the mouth shapes and everything, and maybe even from this particular character you could be able to create your own. Or we'll be talking about, in that's in the next part, we'll be talking about this and how we created the mouth for this character, the hands, and some other few parts that I cannot think of right now. So please give us a like, subscribe to our channel. It will really help. Our channel is new. Well, until next time, bye.